Okay, so let's jump right in. Think about a quiet field, or maybe a forest. It seems peaceful, right? Tranquil, almost like nothing's happening. But what if that's not true? What if that quiet is actually hiding a complex symphony of communication, a huge network of messages flying back and forth all around you?
Yeah, what if the silence we perceive is just because we're not tuned to the right frequency? And what if plants, which we usually think of as just kind of sitting there, are actually having these constant dynamic conversations? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on this hidden world and explore the absolutely incredible ways that plants communicate with each other.
And look, this isn't just some nice philosophical idea. As Professor Lilak Hadani puts it, science is showing us that the plant world is absolutely buzzing with information. So let's get into our explainer and start decoding this secret language, chapter by chapter. So our first chapter is all about communication through the air. You can think of it like plants are sending messages out on the wind. But instead of using sound, they're using chemical signals, a sort of yell via smell, if you will.
Now, the technical term for these messages is volatile organic compounds, or VOCs for short. Basically, these are tiny airborne molecules that plants release to send really specific information to their neighbors about, well, everything, from incoming pests to environmental stress.
So how does this actually work? Well, it follows a pretty classic communication model. First, you have a transmitter. That's a plant that's under stress, and it releases a unique cocktail of these VOCs. Second, the channel is just the air and the wind carrying those signals. And finally, you have the receiver, a neighboring plant that picks up these chemicals through tiny pores on its leaves, and then it interprets the message. And the messages they're sending are just fascinating. You know that smell of freshly cut grass? It turns out that's a massive distress call. Some corn plants, when they're attacked by caterpillars, send out a chemical SOS that literally calls in parasitic wasps to act as bodyguards. Acacia trees can even recruit entire ant armies to defend them. It is an incredibly sophisticated defense network, and it's all coordinated through scent. Okay, so we've covered the airwaves. Now, for our next chapter, let's head underground. We're going to explore a system that people have started calling the Wood Wide Web. And believe me, it really is a biological superhighway. This superhighway is made of what are called mycorrhizal networks. Just imagine these vast, intricate webs of fungal threads that physically link the root systems of different plants together. It creates this shared infrastructure that can stretch across an entire forest. It's wild.
And here's the crucial part. This network does way more than just connect plants. It's like a pipeline for transferring vital resources. We're talking carbon, nitrogen between them. But it's also a hardwired alarm system. It allows plants to send distress signals about disease or insect attacks directly to their neighbors through the soil.
And this one study just illustrates the power of this network perfectly. Scientists watched as a single tomato plant got attacked by a caterpillar. Within hours, its neighbors, which were only connected by this fungal network, preemptively cranked up their own chemical defenses. They got the warning message and were ready for battle before the threat even got to them. All right, so we've talked about the slower methods, the scents, and the fungal networks. Let's move to Chapter 3, the high-speed options. Because it turns out plants also use electrical and hydraulic signals for near-instant communication. It's almost like a biological nervous system. And there are two main types here. First, you've got electrical signals. These are actual action potentials that fire through a plant's tissue, really similar to how our own nerve impulses work. The second type are hydraulic signals. These are basically waves of pressure that travel through the plant's internal plumbing, its water pipes, sending messages about physical damage or if it's getting thirsty. And when we say fast, we mean fast. These electrical waves can travel at several millimeters per second. Now, that might not sound like much to us, but in the plant world, that's practically light speed compared to the slow diffusion of chemicals. It means a plant can have a plant-wide response in minutes instead of hours.
But here's where it gets truly mind-blowing. These signals don't just stay inside one plant. Research on dandelions showed that when one plant is injured, it can actually transmit an electrical warning signal to a neighbor just by touching it, as long as there's something conductive like dew or rain connecting them.
So of course, that begs a pretty fascinating question, right? If the signal really is purely electrical, what would happen if you connected two plants that aren't touching with something that conducts electricity, like, say, a simple wire? Well, scientists did exactly that. They took two plants, put them in separate pots, no shared soil, no shared air, and just connected them with a single copper wire. And when they stressed out one plant, the other plant responded. It's incredible proof that the electrical signal itself was the messenger, totally independent of any other biological link.
So let's do a quick recap with this awesome table. Think of it this way. The chemical signals, the VOCs, they're like sending a message in a bottle. Kind of slow, but they can travel a good distance on the wind. The mycorrhizal networks are like a fiber optic cable. Also slow, but super reliable and long range. And the electrical signals? That's the text message of the plant world. Incredibly fast, but really only for short-range, direct contact.
Okay, now let's zoom all the way out. When you start to combine all these methods, the airborne, the underground, the electrical, what you get isn't just a bunch of individual languages. You get a fully integrated communication network. You get the Internet of Plants.
And this is a really powerful way to think about it. Just like our internet uses different technologies, Wi-Fi, fiber optics, the plant internet uses its own infrastructure. You've got airborne VOCs for wireless signals, and then the vast mycorrhizal and root systems for all the hardwired connections. And this creates a true network effect. Remember those dandelions we talked about? Well, experiments showed that an injury signal could pass from the first plant to a primary receiver it was touching, and then from that plant to a secondary receiver. This shows us a community-wide alert system where a single piece of information can cascade through an entire population.
Which brings us to our final, and maybe the most complicated question of all. We've seen how plants talk, but we haven't really touched on why. I mean, what's the evolutionary point of all this chatter?
And this is where the scientific debate gets really juicy. Is all this communication a form of intentional cooperation where plants are actively trying to help their neighbors survive? Or is it more like spying? Are plants just evolving to eavesdrop on the distress signals that others can't help but send out, all for their own selfish benefit?
Answering that one question just opens up a whole host of other fascinating puzzles. I mean, from an evolutionary perspective, why would you warn your competitor? Could plants send out fake signals to trick their rivals into wasting energy? Does it matter if you're related? These questions just go to show that this is a super vibrant, evolving field of study that's challenging our very definition of what communication even is.
And that leaves us with one last big thought. We've just uncovered this incredibly complex world of chemical, fungal, and electrical signaling that was happening right under our noses, completely silent to us. And it really makes you wonder, if plants can do all of this, what else is happening in the natural world that we're just not hearing yet? What other conversations are going on all around us, just waiting for us to figure out how to listen?